Rossi, and I chose to talk about how sleep deprivation damages cognitive functions and memory in our brain and why it's dangerous to us. So first, I just want you to take a look at all of these pretty bad-looking car accidents. According to a study done by the CDC in 2013, approximately 150,000 accidents of adults over the age of 18 in 19 different states. About 1 in 25 or 4% have fallen asleep while driving within the past month that they did this test. So just within 30 days, over 4% of people have reportedly fallen asleep while driving. And because of that, it estimates that 72,000 crashes a year are caused due to drowsy driving, along with 44,000 injuries and 800 deaths. And that's just within 2013. Yearly, it's even more than that in certain states. So I just kind of want to talk about why people study brain activity and sleep. I noticed a lot of people are interested in it because your brain has different parts of it that are more active while you're asleep than when you're awake, and different parts of it are doing different things while you're awake than when you're sleeping. So a lot of people wanted to have studied different aspects of what's going on to your body and your brain, specifically different between sleeping and not sleeping. And it also, when people don't sleep, you can't you notice a difference in all of the brain activity when you're sleeping, and you can tell how you can't, I'm sorry, can I just go back on this slide really quickly? Start over? Okay, I'm not getting down what I need to say. Okay, so the reason that people want to study brain activity during sleep is because there's more of it in different parts. And when you don't sleep, they can see different parts of your brain lacking different activities that are necessary for things such as brain growth and brain development. Your brain processes most of your memories while you're asleep by replaying your memories at least 10 times in your head, and then it finds its place into your memories. When you don't sleep, your brain can't do that process of replaying important information for you to remember later, which is why there's a high chance of memory loss, or you can even your brain can trick yourself into having false memories because it can only pick up specific things that it's remembered because of lack of sleep. It can't do the whole process. So a lot of people suffer from having false memories as well as just losing them in general. And just to be clear what cognitive functions are, what are being damaged in your brain, cognitive functions are any activity in your brain that helps lead to further growth or further academics, just learning more things, keeping important things in your mind. So damaging that causes you. Oops, no, sorry, I'm not ready to move on to that. Wait a second. So how it damages the brain is there are two different kinds of sleep deprivation that can damage your brain. There's acute sleep deprivation, or also partial sleep deprivation, where you're only getting a couple hours of sleep a night for a lot of different nights, and that isn't as severe as chronic sleep deprivation or total sleep deprivation, where you go continuously without sleeping, and that is clearly more damaging because you're not letting your body rest at all in any period. So your body and your brain aren't functioning the way that they should be because they're not getting any chance at all to do any of that. So chronic sleep deprivation is a lot worse and happens from just not sleeping at all. It also damages your brain by cutting off and slowing down blood circulation. And the lack of blood circulation damages different parts in your brain that pick up different information, and it damages different receptors that respond to keeping memories and to filtering out different information and deciding whether information is necessary or dangerous, or whether it's safe and unimportant and something that you can just pass by, which is where I wanted to talk about filtering information and stuff like that. If you have a lack of sleep and your brain isn't letting you filter out information the proper way, it can cause a lot of different dangers. So if you say you're super tired, you haven't slept in a couple days, and you're at your house and you don't really notice that maybe there's someone that you've never seen before in your apartment building, that not really taking into consideration what that danger could be, because your brain can't process the difference between it being dangerous and it not being dangerous, can cause you to potentially have someone break into your house, or while you're driving, if you're not able to pay attention to the fact that the difference between a sign on the road and a deer on the road, you could potentially cause an accident, killing a deer or swerving to hit someone else. Even something as simple as not being awake in the morning enough to accidentally put something on a stove or leave your stove on. Just little things where if your brain hasn't gotten enough sleep to access the information it needs to be able to filter out important things and not important things, you can cause yourself to really be in a lot of danger just with different situations. So the way that people have tested these things with filtering efficiency, whether you can tell if there's important information or not, are by visual working capacity tests, these are kind of just different ones that just test different things, whether you can tell the difference between the sizes in the object, or just the placement of an object or something like that. To test that, they would test you before sleep deprivation and see how quickly or how much you can remember, how well you can do at filtering out different things, pretty much just if you can follow what they're looking for. And then after sleep deprivation, they'll see how different that is, how much slower you become at deciding between two different pieces of information, or how you remember less, because our brains supposedly our brains can only keep 4 different objects in our memory at one time while we're thinking about it. So they test between whether that increases or decreases with sleep deprivation, which it clearly does, because you can't remember as much. So so they found that you can't remember as many things. They also do they also test whether a subject can just tell the difference. I already explained that. Never mind. I'm sorry. Okay. So going further into this, what I would have liked to looked into more was finding maybe specifically what it is in our brains that alerts us of dangerous things and specifically how that's being altered with sleep. Because now that I've been doing it, I'm more interested in exactly how dangerous it can be to just not be completely fully aware because of being tired. And I also would have liked to find specific chemical imbalances with the brain or chemical changes with the brain throughout sleep deprivation, because I was unable to find specifics with specific chemicals changing and that kind of stuff. So I really wanted to look more into those different aspects of it. And I'm under time, but that's all I have. So thank you.
Thanks, Piper. All right, so we will move into the defense portion. So we're going to open it up for questions from our audience and from our panelists.
I can't see who you are, but you're raising your hand. Ellie?
I was just wondering, what was your outlet or inspiration, I guess, for doing this project?
I actually thought about that yesterday while I was asking someone else that, and I honestly didn't really think senior projects were going to be, I didn't really want to do something crazy, but I really wanted to teach myself something new, and I'm already really interested in the science field and chemistry and biology and stuff like that, so I wanted to just look into something with the brain and see if I could find and just teach myself something new about just how our brains work and something sciencey.
Sweet.
Yeah. Annie?
I was wondering if in the scope of your research you looked at onto insomnia as a form of sleep deprivation.
Yeah, so I started out my project and I was going to do it between sleep deprivation and insomnia, but insomnia is just a form of sleep deprivation. It pretty much is a type of chronic sleep deprivation. It's, in my idea, mixed with partial sleep deprivation, since you are sleeping a little bit every night, but you're really not. It turns into a chronic problem, but I didn't look super into insomnia because I was kind of just agreeing that it was sleep deprivation. Kyle?
Did you find any difference in the effects of sleep deprivation based on the cause, whether it was a natural insomnia, whether it was chemically altered, maybe drinking too much caffeine or drug induced?
I did see a lot of, when I was doing my initial research, I noticed a lot of studies were being studied against something else. It wasn't just sleep deprivation with these functions, it was sleep deprivation after a brain traumatic injury or after intense exercise, to see just different things. I know I read one that had to do with cortisol levels and adrenaline and how sleep deprivation affects your ability for your body to keep up with activities and stuff, like physical activities and stuff like that. So I saw a lot of things that they did based off of different things that could include that. Did that answer your question?
Yeah, thanks.
Dylan?
Did you look at all into the effects of oversleeping or narcolepsy?
I read briefly an article about oversleeping, but I wasn't really looking into oversleeping, so I didn't really pay attention into the damages of that as much. But it definitely is out there. People are looking into that. Lauren?
What was the most interesting sort of study or piece of evidence that you found when you were digging into this? Like, what was the one that really stood out to you? It was like, whoa, that's kind of crazy.
I feel like I learned a lot of different stuff. Probably the most interesting would have to be just about all of the, about like how our brains, when we're asleep, can chemically turn off different parts of our brain to still do certain things, but it also turns off other parts of our brain so that we stop doing other things. Like your brain, when you're sleeping, the part that is for moving and that kind of stuff completely turns off. but other parts of your brain will also be awake at the same time, and your brain itself has to produce the chemicals to be able to turn parts of itself off and keep parts of itself on. And I think that was probably the most interesting piece that I learned about.
Sophie?
Hi. I was wondering if you read a little more into why our brains can only, sorry I say supposedly, like keep 4 objects in its mind, like remembering at all times. I was wondering if you had like any more information regarding that, because that was just
Yeah,
curious.
I came across that in one of my articles and how they were testing different. Oh my goodness, I just forgot your question all of a sudden. Oh right, okay. So they were testing about how much you can keep with visual memory capacity, like how much our capacity is, and they had already found that we supposedly can only keep 4 objects.
I guess it was just
so they
that's
didn't really
how.
continue on with that about whether they found more, because they weren't looking at just general brain activity on brain capacity. They were looking at it based off of sleep deprivation. So no, I'm sorry, I can't give you more than just what I read. Kurt?
So after all of this research, can you tell us what the optimal sleep or hours of sleep per night range might be? Like, when do I know I'm doing myself a disservice or if I'm not sleeping enough?
So throughout my research at the beginning of it, I found a lot about how the amount we sleep changes as we age. So it really depends on how old you are, but for our general age group, it would be between 6 to 8 hours of sleep. Anything less than 4 to 5 is considered partial sleep deprivation, and I guess anything more than that would be oversleeping. But it just changes as you get old. Like as you get older, we only spend like 80% of the night asleep. We spend the rest of it awake as we get older, which means that we only sleep a little bit. As we get older, we start staying awake more throughout the rest of it. But Dane, did you have a question?
Well, yeah, actually, just a clarifying question. You said, with Kurt's question, you were saying we have a 6 to 8 hour range. Is that us as the teenagers or them? Or adults?
It actually
Versus
is
them,
a general
huh?
sense. It's kind of a general sense. We are almost adults, like between the ages of 17 and probably like 50. I'm guessing none of you guys are really that over 50, but like we're all in the same general sleeping area. I don't know how old you guys are. But it doesn't start, you don't start losing your sleep until you start getting in your 60s and 70s. Dylan?
What do you think the most important takeaway you've gotten from your research has been?
That you really need to sleep, and even only sleeping a little bit is not getting sleep. And just because you go one night without sleep and then sleep 8 hours the next day, you didn't make up for not sleeping that night. So my biggest takeaway is just like we have to make sure that we get our sleep or we are putting ourselves in danger.
All right, we're going to end questions there. Thank you, Piper. If you would step outside for just a moment while we deliberate. I would appreciate it. Thanks. Dylan, will you hit the off button on that camera?
Where is it?